All right, let's get right into it. When you picture a great surgeon, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably steady hands, right? Deep knowledge, technical perfection. And for the longest time, that was the whole story. But it turns out the skills that really make a surgeon great often have nothing to do with how they hold a scalpel. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the secret, non-technical skills that are changing the game for patient safety.
Yeah, this classic line, it's the perfect snapshot of that old myth. It sounds heroic, doesn't it? But as a model for how surgery actually works today, it's not just incomplete, it's dangerously outdated. See, an operating room isn't a stage for a solo performance. It's one of the most complex, high-stakes team environments you can possibly imagine.
And that stereotype really stuck around. Take orthopedics, for example. The old-school image was of a surgeon who was basically all muscle and technical know-how. But focusing only on surgery as a physical craft completely misses the very thing that can, and does, lead to disaster.
Because here's the thing. When you start to peel back the layers of that heroic myth, you find a really serious, system-wide problem. The biggest danger in the OR often isn't a slip of a hand. It's a breakdown in the system itself.
Just look at this number. 98,000. Back in 1999, a huge report called To Err is Human estimated that up to 98,000 people were dying every single year in U.S. hospitals from medical errors that could have been prevented. I mean, that's just a staggering figure, right? And it forced the entire medical world to ask a really tough question. Where are all these mistakes coming from? And it turns out the answer usually wasn't just one person messing up. It was something safety expert James Reason called latent errors. He came up with this brilliant Swiss cheese model to explain it. Think of it like this. Any complex system has layers of defense, like slices of Swiss cheese, but every slice has a few holes in it. They're just part of the system. A disaster only happens when, by pure bad luck, all those little holes line up perfectly, letting a problem shoot straight through all the defenses.
So, when researchers dug into why these errors were happening, they found something that almost nobody expected. A study led by Atul Gawande's team found that a breakdown in communication was a factor in a full 43% of surgical errors. Not a shaky hand, not a technical mistake, but failures in how the team worked together, communicated, and led. The problem wasn't the surgeon's hands, it was the human element.
So if the problem isn't the scalpel, but the people, where do you even start to look for a solution? Well, believe it or not, the answer wasn't in a hospital at all. It was in a place where high-performing teams have to manage immense pressure every single day, the cockpit of an airplane.
This whole journey is actually pretty fascinating. It all kicked off in the 70s when NASA figured out that most plane crashes weren't due to engine failure, but human failure, breakdowns in teamwork. So the aviation industry created something called Crew Resource Management, or CRM, and it totally revolutionized air safety. Then in the 90s, some really smart anesthetists started thinking, hey, we could use this in the operating room, which eventually led to the surgeons themselves developing a formal system in the 2000s.
And that brings us to the big solution here, the NOTS framework. That stands for Non-Technical Skills for Surgeons. It's a system designed to do three things: define, teach, and assess all those crucial skills that were missing from that old heroic stereotype.
So what are these skills, really? Well, they're all the cognitive and social skills that work alongside pure technical ability. Here's a good way to think about it. If a surgeon's technical skill is the hardware, then these non-technical skills are the software, the operating system that makes sure everything runs smoothly and safely. All right, so the framework is built on 4 key pillars. Let's walk through them. First up is situation awareness, basically knowing exactly what's going on and, more importantly, what's likely to happen next. Second, you've got decision-making, which is all about weighing your options when the pressure is on. Third is communication and teamwork, making sure everyone is on the same page. And finally, leadership, setting the tone, supporting your team, and managing stress. Okay, so this all sounds great on paper, right? But does it actually hold up in the real world? Can you even measure these kinds of skills and see if they make a difference? Well, the answer is a big yes. Let's look at how researchers put this framework to the test.
Let's take a look at some data from a study in India. Researchers used this very framework to watch and rate 19 different surgeons. For situation awareness, that ability to see what's coming, most were rated acceptable, but only about a third of them were considered good.
But now, look at decision-making. Here, things were much stronger. Over 63%, the majority, were rated as good. And what about communication and teamwork? Remember how critical that was for preventing those errors we talked about? Well, same story here. It was also a strong point, with almost half the surgeons getting a good rating.
And wrapping up with leadership, most were rated acceptable. So what's the big picture here? The really great news is that not a single surgeon was rated poor in any category. That's huge. But it also shows you there's a clear path for getting even better, a way to move from just being acceptable to becoming truly good.
So how do you make that jump from acceptable to good? Well, the answer is high-fidelity simulation. You put trainees into these incredibly realistic but totally safe scenarios. And we're talking about some seriously intense stuff. Imagine having to manage a senior colleague who shows up drunk, or dealing with a critical piece of equipment failing mid-surgery, or having to tell an upset family about a complication. It's in those tough moments, with an expert giving you direct feedback, that these skills are really built.
And get this, the training absolutely works. A pilot study with orthopedic trainees in the UK found that after just one day in a simulation course like this, their own understanding of these skills jumped from a 3.0 all the way to a 4.2 on a 5-point scale. This isn't just theory, it's targeted practice with results you can actually measure.
So what all of this really points to is a massive shift in what it even means to be a great surgeon. We're moving away from the old way of thinking and toward a completely new vision of surgical excellence.
At the end of the day, this is a fundamental change. We are moving away from that old myth of the surgeon as a lone wolf genius, valued only for their so-called good hands. The new reality is that an excellent surgeon is a high-performing team leader, and they're defined just as much by their ability to communicate and lead as they are by their skill with a scalpel. They're not just the first violinist anymore. They're the conductor of the entire orchestra.
You know, when you think about it, this whole transformation in surgery is pretty incredible. These skills, total situation awareness, crystal clear decision-making, leadership when everything is on the line, and just seamless teamwork, they started in aviation and they were perfected in surgery. But it makes you wonder, where else are these the invisible skills that make the difference between success and failure, or maybe even between life and death? It's definitely something to think about.